Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, and we are back for more 6.5 Summit Day 1 action, talking about, but quite frankly, the biggest topic out there in tech, and that is AI. And it's my pleasure to introduce from Qualcomm, Ziad Asgar, who runs AI for Qualcomm. Ziad, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Pat.
Yeah,
Always great to
it's
chat.
it's funny. I thought I was overexposed, and then I can't open up social media or LinkedIn or read an article without your contributions. You seem to be making the rounds, and listen, you're in a great place here. You're a fearless leader. Cristiano Amon has participated in the summit, and a lot of other executives. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I mean, we have an awesome story, so we're very happy to talk about it.
Yeah, so I've been researching Qualcomm close to 12 years now. And, it's funny, spent a lot of time on the PC side of my career, spent some time in the data center side. One of the most fascinating areas, though, is AI on device and doing it at very low power. And that's really one of the hallmarks and something that to Qualcomm's credit has created a franchise. How were you able to create this? And by the way, none of this is overnight. All right, I know
Of
that
course.
and I respect that. But how did you develop such a, dare I call it, prowess for on-device AI?
Yeah, so this is something, Pat, that we've been working on for more than a decade. So we started with the research side of our team, where we've been looking at exactly how you take these models, how you make them run best on device from a power perspective, from a performance perspective, but also from a KPI angle. So everything that has come together today at Qualcomm, which sets us up in a very amazing position, is really this crescendo that we've been building up for quite some time. And that has been with the focus on building hardware, number one, that's best in class, that's software that runs amazingly well on the device. And then lastly, it's the tools.
Yeah.
I think it's all these three things coming together in a massive fashion that allows us to do what we do. On the hardware side, as you know, we have this one technology roadmap that I drive. Essentially, we can take this same IP from the smartphone to the XR to the compute platforms, even onto auto.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we are able to actually take those advantages where people run some of these models with hundreds of watts as the number in their head. We run them in milliwatts in our heads. And essentially, even on the edge, in general, our performance per watt is more than double what the other people are able to do. And then, as you know, that last year we talked about bringing in the Qualcomm AI Stack. The Qualcomm AI Stack is basically the real vehicle that allows to, because you know this very well, but among the biggest challenges in AI is really software, much more than hardware.
Exactly.
And then, of course, lastly, it's basically the tools. And tools are absolutely critical, because if you take the large model that's trained on the server and just try to bring it as is on the device, you will not be able to see the benefits or the KPIs that we are able to show. It's really those investments that are coming together in amazing fashion at the same time when we have this, amazing tectonic shift happening in the industry, where the models are getting to a certain degree of maturity, where they're able to do so much more than what they were able to do in the past. So I think we're very glad. I think one of the things that I talked about, if you recall, at the Snapdragon Summit last year, I talked about things like 4-bit,
Yeah, that's right.
inferencing on the device. And it's all, we've been thinking through all of these steps to be able to get to where we are. So we're glad that the state of the art has gotten to the point where it is today.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch. And one thing that's front and center to those people who I see as leaders today in AR is that they have a research function. And I'm always trying to educate people that, hey, don't just combine R&D because it's cool. Research and development are two very different things. And Qualcomm is one of the last remaining companies that does hardcore research. And I'll admit 5 years ago when you threw the axe in the sea and talked about being a leader in AI, I was a little bit skeptical, right? Because I didn't know exactly what you were up on the research side. But quite frankly, the camera is now dominated by AI. I mean, it's computational photography. And I have more AI models running on my Qualcomm Snapdragon based smartphone than I do any other device that I have. So it is fun to watch. So part of the conversation and part of the education, there is this concept of hybrid AI that has
Hmm.
come up. The good side about my analyst practice is my company covers all the way from device to SaaS, and that includes the data center. So the
Of
word
course.
hybrid, I am very comfortable with. So can you talk about hybrid AI? I saw it in one of your op-eds or your blog. What is it and how is Qualcomm taking advantage of this?
Yeah, I think we really feel that number one, the advantages of doing it on device are very clear, right? You can keep this data private, you can keep it secure, you can have this immediacy, you can have KPIs that are basically always met. But let's
Right.
imagine that the models continue to grow as they are growing in some cases in terms of being able to get more ability, especially as we morph onto what I call multi-model GPT-like models, where what's going to happen is it's not just text to text, but it's text to image, it's text to music, it's image to video, all those different modalities as they come in, the model size might be larger than what we have. In that case, what we are able to do is to really distribute the capability between what we can do on the device versus what happens on the cloud. And by doing that, if, for example, a particular device might be lesser capable than what we have on Snapdragon capable devices, you can still have a story of being able to extend the reach of that experience. So essentially, part that can be done, and those that are privacy centric happen on the device. And then additionally, cloud with its much more capability that's available out there can then come in and be able to actually do more of the AI processing to get to a certain KPI and experience that's very critical for consumers to see.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Qualcomm. I know you don't forget, but I want to make sure our audience doesn't forget that Qualcomm is hands down, and this is data, not just opinion, the leader in 5G communications. So, whether it's on device or moving data to have that fast response, Qualcomm is absolutely poised to take advantage of the opportunity. So back at Mobile World Congress, I mean, seems like a lifetime ago. It was only a few months ago. You stopped me in your booth and showed me a stable diffusion running on a smartphone. So first off, I didn't even know that was possible. Okay, but once I got in there and put in what I thought was a funny description that would trick the system or giving an error, it actually gave me back exactly what I asked for. But that takes tools to
Yes.
shrink. And I know Stable Diffusion isn't a large language model; it's a little bit different. But you have tools to shrink large language models to be able to run on edge devices like a smartphone, like a PC, like a tablet. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it all started a little bit with that stable diffusion demo and what really Edge could do. I think it showed people that look, Edge is capable of doing a lot more. I mean, these models were people were running on hundreds of watts, GPUs that burn like hundreds of watts of power, and
Right.
we showed it running in milliwatts. And I think it kind of opened up the spectrum of possibilities that we have. And I think, just to put that in perspective, right? That model was a billion parameter model that we were running at Mobile World Congress. It was running in 8-bit quantization. And that tells you why we were able to run it, right? If you take that 32-bit floating point model and just bring it as is, you would never be able to even make it
No.
fit on the device, right? But with the tools, as you pointed out, we have built-in tools to do compression, to built-in tools to do quantization. But quantization, you got to do in a way that you do not lose accuracy. If you just do clipping, you'll lose accuracy and you'll not be able to do it right. So we published some of these ideas on what we call, for example, adaptive rounding. It allows you to be able to round as you quantize to a particular number based on the data. And looking at some of those things, we are able to preserve accuracy while doing quantization. Again, a unique advantage of Qualcomm. We bring in ideas, for example, like neural architecture search, which allows us to compress the model even further. And then, of course, significant amount of compiler research. We have done some key small acquisitions recently also that allows us to be able to do even better from a compiler technology perspective. We've taken all of those ideas and put it into our AI model efficiency toolkit that then fits into also our Qualcomm model suite. Qualcomm AI suite, and that basically has all of these tools to be able to do those things and make it work best on Snapdragon. Now, a few more points to add on this is, as I said, 1 billion parameter model, 8-bit is what we were running at Mobile World Congress. Like I showed in December of last year, kind of anticipating where the world is going. We're happy that it's things have lined up exactly that way. we can comfortably now take this next step to take it to 4 bits, right? So technically, we can do a lot more from the same amount of compute that we might have on the device. But as you know, in towards the end of this year, we'll be launching our new platform. And again, we've been a lot more focused on enhancing it to be able to do even better for large models. And not just text to text, but models that are focused on this multi-model
Yeah.
sort of AI, which means text, image, video, audio, music. And I think with that, what we're shooting as to be able to push models that go up to 10 billion parameter models.
Right.
And then, of course, as we go to 4-bit, we bring in all the quantization techniques, better hardware, better software. And I think the great part about this LLM revolution, Pat, is that now those people who can do best AI on the device have a use case that actually shows that prowess, right? I mean, you pointed out, right? We were running these in camera, we were running these in
Yeah.
audio for the longest time, but to a great extent, they were hidden. So I'm very pleased and super excited that now we have use cases that actually are AI centric that we can bring to the front on the device and really be able to show our advantage that we have from an AI technology, hardware, software, and tools perspective.
So let's talk about use cases. I think
Sure.
most people in the tech beltway have seen a lot of the cloud-based use cases, but now the conversation is starting to move to, hey, what consumer use cases can I run on device? Let's say generative AI models. Can you give us a
Yeah.
flavor of what you're looking at? I mean, you have deep, integration into obviously your OEMs, ODMs, but also a lot of the ISVs that have to light up these experiences.
Yeah. Since we did that demo at World Congress, Pat, I can tell you each one of our OEMs has come to us and said, hey, I want to run these use cases. These are very specific use cases. So at a very high level, take the example of smartphone. Smartphone perhaps would focus a little bit on productivity, but a lot more on entertainment is the way I think about it, right?
Right.
So, like for example, if you see all the, not you and me, but all the young people out there, they're creating this video content and they're creating entirely, for the most part, on smartphones today,
Yeah.
right? Now, what you can do is augment a lot of that with basically generative AI to be able to actually generate some of that content entirely on the device. To be able to, for example, enhance your camera experience. So now you can say, well, we could be having this interview in front of the Eiffel Tower, and it is able to create that background on the device entirely, not taking anywhere from the internet, and be able to have that as the background. Or you can have this conversational sort of
Yeah.
actual virtual assistant, a use case that we have talked about for quite some time, honestly. But now those models, the hardware, the software, tools have gotten to that maturity. Honestly, from my mind, it's built up into this crescendo. And I think we are getting to that point where people really see the benefit of these technologies. Let's take the example of a PC, Windows on Snapdragon. Now you can take a lot of these generative AI use cases. You can have those document creation, document summarization. You can have a transcript of this call that we are having right now, and be able to actually create a 10 slide PowerPoint deck, for example, that you
Right.
can present in your next meeting. For XR, honestly, the two are extremely complementary. The problem that people have had is you got to create this virtual world around you in VR. And now you got to go and, the graphic designer sits and creates this world for one person. But what if we could create a world that's actually created based on the contextual data that you have on the device, the data that you don't want to leave the device? And that
Exactly.
data creates a world that's very suited to what you or I might like on our phones, that might be on our devices, that might be very different. So it's extremely well suited for on device, extremely well suited for audio, video, image, content creation. I mean, we just imagine the things that people are doing, for example, with nerves, which are the neural
Yeah.
radiance fields, right? I mean, this can be so good for what we can do with VR. It would be just amazing. And then similarly, of course, in the automotive scenario, we have this very robotic sort of interface to our cars today. But it could be a Night Rider-like experience now, right? It could be an experience where essentially you can have a conversation with your car and say, "Look, I want to go today to Torrey Pines Beach over here in San Diego, but I want to stop somewhere for some food, and I prefer pizza or something."
Right.
And that's a very conversational experience. It really changes the way we interact with our devices. And I think each one of Qualcomm product lines is very well set to benefit from this generative AI revolution that we have going on.
Yeah, I like those. I like the use cases you rattle off. And one fundamental connective tissue that all of them has is data density, right?
Yes.
whether it's videos, whether it's images, whether it's, my terabytes of even documents that
Yes.
I have that quite frankly, I don't want to send everything up to the cloud. And I also know that in the future, when we do get to a world of hybrid AI, even if the end device can't necessarily handle it, and the use case or the
Yeah.
user is okay waiting some time, it can also do this kind of split processing between the cloud and the device. And that's
Absolutely.
crystal clear to me how that's going to work out. So
Awesome.
we saw stable diffusion on the smartphone. So I guess the question is, and you hinted at it a little bit, do you have plans to support LLMs or large language models like ChatGPT on the device in the future? And maybe Cristiano hinted at this in the interview that I did with him when I was at Mobile World Congress. I have to ask.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just think about what has happened specifically on the Chat GPT like models, right? You have models like Llama out there that are able to actually do very good KPIs in the 7 billion to the 13 billion parameter range.
Right.
And now, as we talked about, I mean, we can comfortably quantize that down to 4 bit. And at the same time, that 10 billion parameter like point that I mentioned is a pretty good sweet spot where we think we'd be able to do a lot of these models. But I think what I'm even more excited, Pat, is about the fact that you can do this multi-model like AI, which is really closer to multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So it could be text to video or image to text, for example, right? Those combinations are where I think the capabilities that we have baked inside our products. And by the way, we have been creating those technologies to do exactly those kinds of models. And I think that's going to be superb. And so, yeah, you'll see a lot more at the Snapdragon Summit. We are quite excited about what we'll be able to show there. Definitely.
I can't wait. Can't wait to go. I think I'm invited. I don't know. I'm invited. Okay, I'll
I
be
am
there.
sure you're invited.
So, hopefully, it's evident throughout this entire conversation why we need AI on device to scale. But I want to tie a ribbon around this and just ask you point blank, why does
Mhm.
generative AI need more than the cloud to scale?
Awesome. So, I mean, let's just think about it, right? In the past, like you talked about in the beginning, Pat, we used to have models that were perhaps in hundreds of millions of parameters, right?
Right.
So the one trend number one, you're seeing models that are going up to, 10 billion parameter models or even more. So there is almost like a 10x increase in the model size. Number two, we had use cases that are now perhaps growing at a rate of way more than 10x. I mean, I see everything every day, something new in the news or media of a completely new idea that people have come up with. So there's 10x on the size of the model. You have a 10x on the size or the number of use cases, and then you have 10x in terms of the number of people who want to use these capabilities, right? So it's a real logarithmic sort of explosion in terms of the needs that you have. And the way I put it always on this one, Pat, is generative AI needs the edge to be able to get to its full potential. What do I mean by that, right? If this 10x, 10x, 10x sort of growth continues, you'll need so much resources in the cloud that the cloud can never have. And even from a sustainability perspective, to be running these models in hundreds of watts of power with this, incremental and magnifying effect is going to be quite limiting. And that's why generative AI needs the edge. It needs edge devices to be able to do a lot more of that generative work on the device. Of course, preserves privacy. I mean, you have seen news in recent days, some tech companies where the workers have actually tried to do some of these models, which are really great productivity tools, by the way.
Right.
But now that confidential information is sitting on the cloud somewhere. And the last part I would really want to mention on this, Pat, is at any given point in time, just from a Qualcomm scale perspective, we have more than 2 billion plus devices that are in circulation. All of those devices are capable of doing AI. And then every year, we launch hundreds of millions of additional devices that can actually do. Doing it on the edge is what democratizes generative AI. This is what brings it to everybody. It does not limit to a small number of people. It brings it basically to the masses essentially. And I think that's the real power of it. So yeah, we're super excited about what it can do for consumers, but also how we are a big part of making it happen.
Yeah, one of the advantages, I think some people might say disadvantages to industry analysts weighing is we look at history, okay?
Yeah,
And not that the past always defines the future. There
yeah,
are changes and there's some major changes that take it off this track. But one thing has been true for over 30 years that I've been in this industry, and that is with data density, uh, compute needs to be as close to where the content is being generated as possible, right? And that is the most efficient way. We saw this
absolutely.
from mainframe to mini computers. We saw this mini computers to x86 servers. We saw this to PCs, to tablets, and then ultimately to smartphones. And then what we're seeing in the industrial in the IoT, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's just a more efficient way to do this. And I also
totally.
know that moving data is not free. And there is a
Yes,
cost and a time and a latency to do that. So I chalk on-device AI, generative AI, up into, well, of course. I mean, there's nothing that I see that says this is not just going to happen. And by the way, I'm not minimizing the work that it takes to
right,
happen by companies like Qualcomm and the
right.
leadership that you've shown in this. But to me, it's an inevitability. And hopefully, after this conversation, it will look more inevitable to the viewers out there as well. Any last words, Ziad? Anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you to educate folks on this topic?
Yeah, I think I'll add a couple of things, Pat. So I think the great part that's happening is there are like two or three of these phenomenons that are happening at the same time. I think number one, compute getting to the level where we can do this kind of performance at that very, very low power. I think that's going to set people apart who can do it in a proper way. Number
Yeah,
two, models evolving in a way that essentially, the same model. For example, Dolly was the first one that started to do text to image.
yeah.
Was I think in excess of 10 billion. Stable diffusion is 1 billion. People have other versions coming out that are even smaller. So there is a trend towards smaller models that have better curated data. They're actually a lot more capable of doing these amazing use cases. That second trend coming together over there. And then just the third one, which is basically all these different people in the ecosystem thinking today with the excitement around generative AI, how to use it to be able to do better productivity, to be able to do better entertainment, to be able to
Right.
do, better just utility. I think we have enough critical mass at this point in time that we think this is how fundamental changes come in the industry. And I think we're very well set for that with generative AI at this point.
Thanks for the words, and thank you so much for coming on the 6.5 Summit. We really appreciate it again. I can't show up for work any day, any hour without talking about AI. And you're right in the middle of it. And I'm glad to see that the company has been investing so much over so long and quite frankly has the scale to do this on the edge. It's something we
Indeed.
don't talk about a lot, but with Qualcomm in smartphones, tablets, now PCs and cars and IoT, industrial IoT and consumer IoT, the scale and the leveraged R&D, I think is a requirement to do
Indeed.
this. I can't even imagine having to do this for some sort of singular product. So thanks again for coming
Indeed.
on the show.
Thank you for having me, Pat. It was awesome.
Appreciate this. This is Patrick Moorhead signing off for the 6.5 Summit, day one, talking about my favorite topic, artificial intelligence. We threw a little bit of cloud in there as well. I'm excited about the future, whether it's in your phone, your PC, your car, your tablet, your IoT device on the endpoint, whether it's consumer or industrial. It's going to be an exciting future, and it's cool to see what Qualcomm is bringing to the table. So have a great morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the planet. Thanks.